this.
This one, not fax
into
machines.
podcast.
Oh,
yes.
perfect. Okay. All right, everyone. So welcome to Deep Naked Thoughts with Val, and my friend Midhat.
Yeah.
So here we have an entrepreneur, bodybuilder, rock climbing, rope climbing, cat lover, Superman lover, chess lover, the rock lover. He's a lover. Okay. What else? Midhat? What can you tell us about yourself?
You forgot the fact that I love watching TV. I love video games. You forgot about
Yeah, he just loves video games.
Yes.
Superman, Lions.
So regularly start off the podcast by talking about how much you love video games.
Oh, yeah.
I also want to say that you have basically. I just wanted to start off by saying, and I've always wanted to say this, and I think this is a perfect venue as any to talk about this.
All right.
Which is that I always wanted to say this, that my teacher in 4th grade, he always told me that Midhat, you're not going to amount to anything in life. And now I can tell him that, look at me now, like I'm being interviewed for a podcast.
Just kidding.
What's that, 12 people will listen to it? And so,
more than 12 people will listen to
that's
this.
Fantastic. 2 of them are going to be my parents.
Oh my gosh.
So like tens of people are going to listen to this podcast. And so he was totally wrong when he said that, I'm not going to amount to anything in life. And, I've always wanted to say this, and this is like the perfect time to say this. And I'm going to make sure my parents listen to this podcast. They bring out their transistor radio and listen to this podcast. And I'm going to make sure they do that.
What else? This podcast is not
inspiring. That was a very
by-
inspiring message.
That was quite beautiful. This video is not sponsored by Opium Nutrition, but we would like to be. I am currently 2 shots of espresso in. See, you guys thought I was gonna say tequila, huh? Espresso, and we're gonna have some watermelon, energy and electrolytes. This is really cool. With 100 grams of caffeine.
Riveting stuff for your
and 5 grams of aminos. This is
for your
good
first
stuff.
episode for
my first episode?
podcasting. By the way, Val, why is
Yes.
this podcast called Deep Naked
Oh
Thoughts?
my
There's a
gosh.
lot of provocative
Whose
words in there.
podcast is this? Did he just
A
take
lot of
over?
provocative words.
He just-
Deep
what?
podcast.
Deep Naked. Deep Naked. Excuse me, whose podcast is this?
Well, I'm just curious, like why did you name it that?
Yeah, so deep. So first of all, I don't want to keep it surface level. I want to go deep. Okay, so it's not about just going on the surface, going deep. So the first word is deep. The second word is naked, but it's not about being naked because we couldn't air that here. That would be a different platform. We could totally do that, but just not on YouTube. So. I wanted it to be vulnerable, okay? So it's not literal, okay, nobody's gonna get naked here, but I wanted it to be vulnerable. And then my degree is in psychology, and so I just really like thoughts. I like hearing people. I think that's one of the ways that I really get to explore people, and like what they say is what they're thinking. So like, oh, that was a really nice thought, or like, oh, that was a really nice gesture, and so I don't want to say I'm constantly evaluating people's thoughts, but what people say is what they think, and then when they say it, I'm like, oh, you're really thinking that, wow. So deep naked thoughts. Con Val. And then the con is with in Spanish. I am Hispanic, so I had to like throw a little bit of like, sound, a little bit of spice in there, a little bit of Spanish, and then Val.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. That makes more sense.
I studied a little bit of marketing, and it's the trio, like Fox, GMC, CNN, just combos of like 3s, so DNT, Deep Naked Thoughts.
Okay.
It's just easy to remember, and so I kind of did go into like the psychology of that, like the psychology of marketing, the psychology of like words, the psychology of color. I personally like purple, and so it's not red, it's not blue. Like where red is very passionate and blue is kind of calming.
Yeah.
I went with like purple, so I think it's very psychological. I tried to make it psychological. Now you guys know the psychology of it.
Yeah.
But excuse me, sir.
By the way, you just
this
gave
is
me
my interview.
20 minutes of my podcast interview time.
I'm sorry. You're taking from mine.
I need 3 interviews now to make up for that.
You can get 3. 1 more, we can make 4. That's fine.
I'm just very curious as to why you...
Excuse me.
No, I'm really interested in hearing like why you want to interview me, because I think like I am, I'm a 40-year-old man with the
They don't need to know your age.
very pronounced male pattern baldness and a huge issue with like OCD.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, seriously?
Shouldn't you young people be like talking about like interviewing other young people talking about Drake and fidget spinners, the things that you guys are into?
Oh yeah, you're good. Fidget spinners. You want me to go hang out with my friends at the park and just fidget spin? Oh my god. You make it sound like we have some like neurological disorder where we're like crackheads, but with fidget spinners, we're like just fidget spinners. Just like, don't you want to go? No.
So I was really interested in knowing like why you wanted to.
All right. So this is a
don't
really.
have a high opinion of myself.
Wow, that's crazy. Excuse me, sir. I don't like that thought. So the reason why I want to interview Midhat, and this is a common theme, and I hope you guys catch on with this, but I really feel inspired by my circle, and so you inspire me. Like, yeah, I feel inspired by you, and so I just feel like I'm inspired by, you know, your culture, or you know, the cultural differences that you bring to like our friendship. Like, there's things that I don't know about your culture that maybe I would never known if I'd never met you. I also like the entrepreneurial side. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I see myself as a young entrepreneur. Yeah. That is not the way I was brought up. Like, I was brought up with like, get a safe job and have a safe, secure income and kind of like, you know, follow the rules, and it's I don't see you as that. Like, I see you as a risk taker. I see you as somebody that takes a risk on themselves. And by the way, we're in his office, so maybe we can do an office tour later. Maybe not. But like, I want a lot of the things that you have. So I heard this quote, and it's like, envy is a signal of the things that you don't have, but the things that you want. And so when we're envious of somebody, and I'm not saying I'm envious of you, but it's just a signal of like, they have something that you don't. And I'm like, at some point in my life, I would love to have my own office that people can walk into. At some point, I would like to have 3 TVs in here, or a walking, a standing desk.
That one looks like a TV, but that mostly just displays picture of me. You guys can't see it, but it's just like cycling through different pictures of me.
He's very inspired by himself. He's like, that's.
Well, that's really cool. Well, you know, mostly the reason I asked this question was because I started off with a certain level of self-esteem, and now it's been boosted, and I got what I wanted out of this interview already. So we can end it right here.
Wrap this up. Like, I heard enough.
I'll be really happy for the rest of the day.
I can bless you with my presence next year. Oh my god.
Well, thank you. That was a very thoughtful, very nice answer. I don't think that, you know, I don't think I've achieved a lot.
No?
In my life. It's all relative, you know. Success is the definition of success is very relative.
To everyone. What is your definition of success then?
I mean, my definition of success has changed over time. Earlier, like 10 years ago, it was different, and now it's different. So it's always like a moving goalpost.
Yeah.
So I have different goals now, and so I don't think that I'm nowhere near in reaching those goals, and so to that extent, and according to that definition, I don't think I'm successful at all. So it always gives me something to strive towards, and so it's kind of like, occasionally when I talk to some people in my job and in life, and sometimes I hear occasionally that, hey, Midhat, you're smart.
Yeah.
And I don't think of myself as smart because I have talked to other people. Like, I've talked to people who were young people who were interning at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or some people who graduated from Las Cruces High School and went to like an Ivy League school, and I talked to them. And I just see what kind of genuine smartness that is, genuine intelligence that is, and I've seen what that is like, and so compared to that, like, I'm nothing. So that's why it's all relative, and I don't think I haven't achieved what I want to achieve in life, so I'm not successful. Wow, we started off on a very sad
I know.
Talk about my self-esteem issues and the fact that I'm not.
Like, just kidding.
We started off with so much energy, and now we're so quickly in the vulnerable part of this podcast.
I don't see myself.
Literally the first question.
Can I get a do-over?
The second question, I'll start crying.
Well, no, I'm going to give you some perspective because you said it's all relative. And that's one of the things that I also love about talking to Midhat is that I can always have very deep conversations. But if you guys didn't know, my degree is in applied behavior analysis, and I'm currently a registered behavioral tech. Skip forward, I work with individuals that are diagnosed with autism, and that actually changed my perspective about intelligence because we're all born with an IQ, and that is just like this is how fast you process, like your IQ, like this is where you learn. But that is not how much you are capped at, like that is not how much you can learn.
Yeah.
And so I've always struggled with that thought of like, maybe feeling like I'm not smart enough. And that also came from being raised by like immigrant parents and having to learn English. I always felt like maybe I'm not understanding or getting the full picture. And I always felt like, oh, did I miss something? But then working with individuals on the spectrum, I was taught to realize that if you can learn, you are smart because you have the ability to learn. And so that kind of changed my perspective of like, it doesn't matter how smart I am, if I'm always learning, like I will always, like I'm always continuously like upgrading my software, like for my brain, like I'm always, as long as I keep learning, I am smart enough because I didn't just say, well, this is how much I can learn, like I capped out at like at 100 words or like at math, just adding and subtracting. Like as long as I'm always learning, and as long as I'm always surrounded by people that are learning or that can teach me something, that I'm always, for me, like I'm always smart enough or getting smarter.
It just goes back to that quote, which is like, if you're not growing, then you're dying. And
God. That you're dying.
I said that quote 10 years ago.
Jesus. He's like, I'm going to trademark that. If you're going to use this, write Midhat under. Okay.
Yeah, so you're stagnant, like if you're not growing. So it's I think it's a true measure of intelligence too. It's the ability and the desire to keep on learning.
Yeah.
So.
John was US. I think in my book you are very highly successful. Always learn something from you. Like I always hope that you will continue to learn.
You have a
more.
podcast, a YouTube channel, and a book now.
No, I do plan on writing a book, and I am writing a book. Like I have chapters that I'm writing about, and it's kind of like an autobiography. But I am writing a book for my former self, like my younger self, like the book I wish I would have had growing up.
That's so cool.
Oh no, I'm gonna tear up.
That's so cool.
But I think that it's gonna take me a while to like publish it, maybe in the next 5 years, because I think I need that maturity level.
So it's for your younger self 10 years ago?
It's for my younger self when I was like growing up as like maybe being 5, being 10, being a teenager. And so I don't plan to publish this for like maybe another 5 to 6 years, but I am writing a book, and it's just about like forgive yourself for the things that you didn't know. And I do think we consider ourselves as intellectuals, but I would struggle a lot with like not knowing something or like asking for help or like asking my parents for help. Like I don't know if you had this growing up, but my parents are immigrants and Spanish is their first language, and I could never ask them for help with school because they just didn't understand my homework, and so I just had to figure it out or ask the teacher. And so when I would ask them like, well, how do I do this? What do I do? They were very hard on me, like, well, didn't you pay attention in class? Like, shouldn't you know? Obviously you were paying attention. If you were smart enough, you would know how to do it. And when I got that messaging of like, if you were smart enough, you would know, then it's like, well, then I'm not smart enough.
Yeah, that's true.
And so
you're kind of driving that point home and also kind of just like punishing the fact that you're asking a question, which is a great sign of intelligence, asking questions.
Oh yeah, really? Wow. So from a very early age, I felt like I had to be smart enough, and then I went through my own stuff. And currently went to therapy, and there's these things called cognitive distortions, and anytime that something bad would happen to me, I would say like, well, you should have known better, or like, you should have seen it coming, or like if you were smart enough, you wouldn't have put yourself in that position.
Yeah.
And it all went back to like intelligence.
Yeah.
Oh, see, now I'm crying. It all went back to intelligence and like feeling like you're not smart enough, so that's why that happened to you.
Yeah.
And so like I am writing a book, but it is very deep.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I'm at a point where like I want people to know about stuff that's happened to me or like my parents.
Yeah.
And there's also things that I'm still struggling with, like that cognitive distortion of like, well, maybe if you would have been smart enough. So yeah, wow, that got so deep so quick.
It's awesome that you're aware of these things and you're actively trying to overcome it.
Whose interview is this? How am I crying?
It doesn't matter whose interview it is. It's a great conversation. So when did you become aware of the fact that that this is a limiting factor for you in life? Like, because that's a lot of self-awareness right there. The fact that you recognize that.
Yeah.
So when did you become aware that, oh, this is the issue that I need to be aware of and actively try to overcome?
I guess just understanding that I'm not perfect being, understanding that there is no such thing as like perfection, and also being an artist and making art, knowing that no piece is ever perfect, and that's what makes it so beautiful. And so seeing people as pieces of art and knowing like we all have damage and we all have things, we're all very self-critical, and we all judge our products harsher than anybody else would.
Yeah.
Like I'm so impressed by everything you've built and everything you've created and everything you've achieved, and like you did this, you built this, you made this, and you're your own harsh critic being like, I don't see this as success. I'm like, well, it's part of success, but you did this. And I think I've met a lot of artists and I've produced my own art where people are like, oh, I love this, and I'm like, I hate it.
Yeah.
And so I think we're our own harshest critics.
Worst critics, yes.
And so just being aware of like, I'm not perfect, I'm never gonna be perfect, but I am art and I am beautiful and I do stand for something, and as long as I'm always trying to be better, and as long as I'm always trying to learn and keep growing, like I am not stagnating.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's kind of like where I'm at. And that's what gives me peace. It's like I'm not ever gonna have all the answers.
Yes.
There's times where like my younger 12-year-old self didn't know better.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So that's a very important step towards improvement and an important step towards mental maturity is you recognize that thing that's holding you back, and you're actively trying to overcome it. So that's just fantastic, and I think it shows great intelligence, great self-awareness, and talking about the growth part, it's so much fun, like learning new things, and whatever it is, like you were learning something in the books, or you were learning something to do physically, you were learning a new sport. It's just, I feel like just on my own simple level, I feel like the secret to maybe happiness or getting some modicum of happiness is trying to just learn new things and be trying to be good at different things. Just the act of learning is just so satisfying.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I got so much happiness and joy out of whenever I was learning how to do a backflip.
Oh, okay.
And I always had this mental block in my head that I'm 38 years old. Like, what am I doing trying to learn a backflip? But I spent at least like 4 or 5 months training with a coach, and it was one of the happiest days of my life when I was able to do one backflip. Yeah. And so it just signified to me that I learned something new, and I overcame a mental block as well, which was like, hey, I'm 38 years old, I'm too old to learn how to do a backflip. And so just trying to learn new things, putting in effort to learn new things, I think it's maybe there's something therapeutic about it.
Alright, so we are going to wrap up our first session of this interview, and so
that flew by so fast.
You guys already
People learn so much about me.
I know, guys. I'm like, how many times do you cry a day now? I'm like, at least three. I'm like, We get in deep so quick. Anyway, what are your closing thoughts for this interview? Like, what is something that you would leave the audience behind? Because we just talked about intelligence. So I think one of the things that I would leave people behind on this interview is, as long as you keep learning, whether that's about yourself or like, you know, what makes you tick, like your triggers, or what makes you shine, like what are the things that light you up. As long as you are actively, continuously learning about yourself or others or educating your mind, I think that's progress.
Yes, constantly learning new things is great. And there's something to be said about like when you're learning things, your brain is making new connections.
Yeah, neural connections, plasticity, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's just like, it's just a very tangible manifestation of people getting smarter when they're making new connections in their brain and they're learning new things. I have always found, both with like academic learning and both with physical learning, that you try to like learn something and you don't get it, and then you sleep on it the next day. Your brain has made these like new connections, and you're like, oh wow, it's making more sense to me.
It's making more sense, yeah.
Even with like physical activity, like oh, I'm just struggling with this, like with this little cartwheel or something, and then the next day you were like, oh wow, I was able to make some progress there. So try and make some time every day or every week, and I know it's hard, but try to just learn something new.
Yeah, try to learn something
like
new.
I learned a lot about being a terrible podcast guest.
No, he's been great.
I'm gonna take this lesson.
No, this is
and be better in the future.
Okay.
Episodes.
Second interview. So here you go. All right. I guess I should have a natural. Guys, deep naked thoughts. I don't know.